The Creative Psychotherapist is the official podcast of the Creative Clinicians Corner, a practice-building resource for creative psychotherapists. TCP Podcast is the cast for creative, expressive, and experiential-focused psychotherapists curious to learn how to design, build, and scale a thriving private practice. Your host, Raina Lombardi, interviews successful therapists about the tools and strategies they have used to develop creative-focused practices. They also talk about the products, services, and side hustles they have developed using their knowledge and creativity to enhance their therapy practices, make a greater impact in their communities, and diversify their income streams. Welcome. Now here's your host, Raina Lombardi.
Thanks for listening to The Creative Psychotherapist. I'm your host, Raina Lombardi, and I'm really excited to have my next two guests back on the show. They're the first repeat guests since we started, which is really exciting. So welcome Ana-Alicia Lopez and Chris Howard, and they are the owners of the House of Music Therapy, which is a music therapy practice here in Fort Myers, Florida. And Ana-Alicia is a board-certified music therapist, and she received her undergrad music therapy degree from Sam Houston State University and her master's in music therapy with an emphasis in neurologic music therapy from Colorado State University. And she's been a board certified music therapist working in private practice since 2009. And her and her husband, Chris, moved to Fort Myers in 2017, and she started a private practice here, and that was in episode 5, I think. We talked about kind of opening a private practice in a new city, not knowing anybody, and what that was like. And Chris has an MBA and is an expert in entrepreneurship and scaling small businesses. His experience spans over a decade, starting, growing, and maintaining small businesses. In 2007, he graduated with an undergraduate degree in philosophy from Louisiana State University, and in 2016, he completed an MBA from St. Edward's University in Austin, Texas. And before moving to Austin, he worked internationally in management consulting for a variety of organizations in Europe and acted as a consultant at Gartner, working with some of the largest IT organizations in the world. And today, he is the principal owner of Esprit de Corps, which is a consulting and managing partner, and of the House of Music Therapy. Did I say that right?
Yeah, it's a mouthful.
Perfect. Beautiful.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
So thank you guys so much for being willing to come back on and talk about, today we're going to talk about how basically from March, you've had to completely revamp how you were running your practice, because your practice was originally set up where you were going out into the community and meeting people in their homes and doing therapy on site. You were working on like a collaboration with another organization for a brick and mortar space where you could have groups and stuff. And then everything with COVID-19 hit. Turned all of us on our head. So what have you guys been doing?
Wow.
Oh, where do we start?
Oh man. Okay. So I think I'll introduce it, but I think you can probably, Chris, explain like how this jump started.
Go for it.
So the coronavirus came into our area in full effect, and things started shutting down around us, or people started getting worried. I think first was the biggest thing before anything started shutting down. And so ultimately, Chris and I looked at each other and we just said, look, most of our business is going into other people's homes. We do a lot of home health work, and the majority of our clientele are immunocompromised, which is a big reason why we go to see them. So we had to really just stop everything and pause, because we knew just from the little bit of research that we were reading about COVID-19, this could kill them.
Yeah.
And everybody that they love and everybody that we love. So I think one day we just said, stop. We have to stop and do something else. And that's where Chris came in.
Well, I think, to kind of fill in some of the blanks a little bit, whenever coronavirus started and it started kind of spreading, and we started understanding the gravity of it. I think it was at that point that, Ana and I had sat down and had a really frank conversation about the fact that we service clients in home and immunocompromised clients primarily. And we made the decision that we wouldn't continue going in homes.
Mm-hmm.
Frankly, telehealth hadn't been approved by our funding sources yet. So at that point, we had accepted that we were probably gonna shut down the business. Mm-hmm. We weren't, we're an essential, we call it an essential employee.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Right. So we were exempted from the stay-at-home order.
Right.
But as Ana identified, we chose not to do that. We just felt like it wasn't the right thing to do. But funny enough, the way things come together in life, a couple of months prior to that, I had already reached out to the state Medicaid to start talking to them about telehealth. But this was months before coronavirus.
Well, I think it was starting to, it was becoming bigger news in China.
It was even prior to that.
And but you had gotten wind of COVID-19.
Right, but I was talking about telehealth in 2019.
Okay, true. You were.
So I was trying to drive an initiative for telehealth. Before coronavirus was a thing, I had already been talking to Medicaid about it and trying to understand if it was a possibility. The thing is, I've always wanted to service. I grew up in a rural area. Without a lot of access to therapy and things like that. So I really wanted to service, children in low income and rural areas that couldn't normally get access to services like this.
Sure.
But, funny enough, like I said, as life happens, whenever the coronavirus started, we had accepted that we were going to shut down the business. But then like the next week, Medicaid came back to me and said, hey, you remember how we were talking about telehealth a while back? We're going to go ahead and approve that.
Awesome.
So, really overnight, we went from, full in-person, not doing any telehealth to, 100% telehealth, mm-hmm. almost overnight. And since then we've been growing. The brick and mortar piece of it that you brought up, I'll just mention that briefly. There were some pragmatic details that didn't allow us to proceed with that. Mm-hmm. But we're actually super grateful at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, it worked out.
Yeah, it really did. We were definitely lucky that we're not stuck with paying for a lease or something like that. We did recently, move to a new place with an extra room and stuff like that so that we could build out on a studio.
Mm-hmm.
And so that would be, I saw a picture on Facebook where it looked like you're in front of this big green screen and you have a couple of different computers set up, all your instruments around you. And so you moved in order to be able to accommodate all of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And
that's awesome.
Well, I know this is a podcast, but I know you and I can see each other right now, and you probably see behind us
gorgeous
our beautiful image on the green screen.
It is. It's gorgeous. So I'll describe it for listeners, but there's they have a big picture window, which looks like there's some birch trees behind the window. And then the window is set in the middle of a whitewashed brick wall, which has lots of really cool instruments hanging up on the wall, and like a little settee in front of the window. But it's really beautiful.
Yeah, and can kind of change it day by day, hour by hour, however I feel.
Definitely.
Feel fits the mood. Yeah,
we're can be in any place that we want to be. the green screen technology, well, being in IT consulting, I already had kind of a step in the direction of developing things like this. And then I was into scaling businesses, and I was a photographer in another career. So it's all those things, came together. And then funny enough, the green screen and things like that, I wanted to push us beyond just being in front of a camera. And I wanted to drive it to, this notion of being a true telehealth provider, sort of a transition, because, virtual, Ana, you speak more of this than I can, but, telehealth is a lot different than in-person therapy.
Hugely different. So different.
I'll go ahead and throw that out there, and I'll let the experts talk about it.
Yeah, and that I think kind of that concept was a little bit awakening for me and for our therapists and just for everybody, and realizing that there are some major differences, but nothing that we saw more of as a challenge, as just something that we needed to be more creative in finding those answers and figuring out, with the skills and the knowledge that we have, how can we address the needs now in a different setting. And that's kind of how I see this. It's a different setting. It's not a home health setting. It's not a facility. It's a telehealth setting. And there are things that we can do in telehealth that we can't do in person.
Right.
And just kind of grabbing onto those ideas has, I think, really kind of led us to really explore what it means to be a true telehealth provider, and using technology to our advantage, not being scared of it, and not not seeing it as a burden, but seeing it as a really useful tool, just another instrument that we can use. I have my guitars. Yeah, I have my
instrument.
It's another instrument.
That was the key, I think.
It's another instrument that we're using. I have my guitars, I have my ukuleles, I have my keyboards, I have all of my percussive instruments and my wind instruments, and I have all of my computer instruments, and it's just, they're all here together, and I use them all the same. Yeah, it's been really fun, really interesting.
Florida Art Therapy Services is a proud sponsor of the TCP podcast. They offer art therapy for individuals and groups, as well as qualified supervision services and high-quality, experiential-driven continuing education for art therapists, mental health counselors, and clinical social workers. Visit www.floridaarttherapyservices.com for more information. And if you're interested in becoming a sponsor of the Creative Psychotherapist podcast, we have copper, silver, and gold options. So visit www.creativeclinicianscorner.com/podcast for more information.
Part of the transition was, like I said, getting some expertise in understanding how to transition from in-person to telehealth. And I'm a kind of a fan of he's a world-renowned body language expert. His name's Mark Bowden. And I've been following him for a number of years. He does a lot of training seminars and things like that. And I kind of reached out to him on a whim to see if he would be willing to come and talk to us, talk to our team, to talk to us a little bit about that transition, right? How can we use body language to bring children in, to grab their attention, things
That's
like
amazing.
that.
Mm-hmm.
So we hired Mark Bowden. And Mark Bowden came out and met with our team, gave us a little seminar. We met with him for about an hour, and it was, coming from a non-clinician, it was mind-blowing. It blew my mind. Some of the things that he said were completely stunning. I definitely recommend everybody check out Mark Bowden. He's unbelievable.
How do we spell his last name?
It's Mark, Bowden.
All right.
Yes. And I think the notion of using technology as a tool really started from him and his suggestion.
Yeah, TruthPlane is the name of his business. Mm-hmm. TruthPlane. Yeah.
I will look that up, and I'll put that in the show notes too.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, he's incredible. I recommend, absolutely, if you can spend 15 minutes with him.
Oh my gosh, well worth it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So it sounds like he helped you to really re-envision how you were going to work with clients and really be effective with
Yes.
them.
Yes. And how to kind of take yourself outside of the camera and think outside of the camera, you know, and outside of sitting in front of, I should say outside of sitting in front of a camera.
Mm-hmm.
Very rarely do I stay in one position here in front of the camera. Very rarely does my camera stay in one position.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and my proximity to the camera is constantly changing, and my microphone. And so just kind of understanding that this technology can easily be and is meant to be manipulated and used, and that's really helped.
And it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, and it's not going anywhere.
It's not going anywhere.
No,
it's
it's
better.
not. So can you share a little bit from your experience in working with the clients? And obviously, I imagine that you're feeling a lot more confident now than you were maybe in March when you first started. But how that has made a difference, how moving constantly and making those adjustments, moving the camera or the computer, moving your body to like from
Yes.
like how has that impacted the dynamic between you and the client on the other end of the screen?
Absolutely. So we work with, and I in particular on my caseload, I work with a lot of young children with very limited attention spans, and also a lot of sensory processing issues. And so some things that I do are I might get really close to the camera. I might put my face right up in the camera. And there's a game that I play with one of my little girls, and we just make silly sounds, kind of like a seesaw going to and from the camera. And we're working on language, and she's getting a nice close up look at my mouth and my face. And then she's hearing what I'm saying or singing, and she's mimicking what I'm doing. And it's a fun game to her. She's getting to play with the computer and the camera, and she gets to also see herself in a little picture, make funny faces, and see me make really funny faces. And we actually probably couldn't get that close to each other in real life, because that would just be way too close. But in this, we have a camera, computer, city in between us, but we can get that close, and she can get that close to me and really see me. So that's one way we use, the visual manipulation. Another way is sometimes if maybe the visual aspect is too much, I can shut my face off, and you can only hear my voice, and I can get as close as I want to the mic. And I can talk really closely and softly into the mic. Maybe I'm just whispering. And that just changes the entire dynamic of what we're doing. It sounds drastically different. It brings a lot of, a lot of emotion, and plays with a lot of different emotional dynamics in that session. But I can also play with my picture, and I can also make myself itty bitty and super tiny on the screen. And set myself in a corner, and I'm dancing around like a little elf in the corner.
That's amazing. How do you do that?
Oh gosh.
All green screen stuff.
Yeah, all green screen.
The green screen. And I actually might even be able to, I know our audience can't see us here, but maybe Rena, maybe you can explain a little, but you can start to see.
Oh my gosh, you guys are getting
in
smaller and smaller.
Are getting smaller and smaller.
That's and incredible. Oh my gosh, now you're flying.
And it's so funny, and the kids like crack up, and now we're really big, and that's too big. And just really get a kick out of like some of the things that we're doing here. And just me like, oh my gosh, my son is so big. Yeah, you can pick that. And and I use a lot of I use a lot of like PowerPoint stories and visuals to put behind me, that I can play around with, and I'm carrying around my guitar or instruments and singing and playing. And I move, I make sure that I have a little bit of space that I can move around in, which is
Sure.
also very important to telehealth setup, that I can stand up and you can see me, I can sit down, you can see me, I can do some dancing.
It's hard to tell how much space is back here, but
yep.
There's quite a bit of space.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Stand up and dance, and which is kind of, we're developing our telehealth space, setup protocol, like guidelines for setting up your telehealth space for a music therapist. And
oh my gosh, I can imagine that would be an incredible resource for other music therapists that are, going this route, because it's not. I mean, maybe they do teach a little bit of this in grad school currently, but obviously when I went to grad school, they didn't know anything about telehealth. That was not a thing. Right. But how you're doing it, it sounds like you're almost creating a brand new model.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is kind of becoming its own exactly, like you took the words out of my mouth. It's its own model of therapy. It's telehealth therapy. You have maybe, you might have like in-home therapy, you might have school-based music therapy, you have, maybe like hospital, pediatric hospital music therapy. You have telehealth music therapy. It all has its own nuances, and just like anything else, this does too. And I think it's just something we just haven't really studied too much. There just isn't a lot of practice and information out there, but it doesn't mean that it's not possible, and that there aren't really great possibilities out there for it. So.
I love that. I love that you're really you're really focusing on the potential and the positives, acknowledging that, yes, it is different from, these other realms and spaces, but, bedside therapy, whether it's music therapy or art therapy, that's going to look very different than if you were doing that in, an office space or in a school space. Like they all have their place, and they all can be successful and effective. But we also have to be willing to do things differently and learn a little bit.
Oh yeah. Oh, and the learning, definitely learning. And there's a big learning curve, and it wasn't something that I could just like jump into and be successful at. And I don't know anybody who jumped right in and was automatically had a perfect setup session and everything went well, but sometimes that happens, and even in, in therapy settings that we are comfortable in and know more about, it's just part of it.
I think a big part of it for me, we've got a really great team.
Oh my gosh.
We have some of our therapists, just finished their undergrad, whereas others, have, master's degree and they've been practicing. So we have that kind of full spectrum, right, of therapists. It's really exciting to see some of these therapists. We have one in particular that just finished her undergrad and just passed her certification, and she's born into telehealth.
Oh, wow. That's really cool.
It is. It's just kind of wild. Gosh, her very first music therapy job is in telehealth.
Yeah, in telehealth.
Wow, that is mind blowing. Like coming from a place where it didn't exist,
Yes.
when we were in school, or at least when I was in school. So like that idea of like your first job doing this is pretty wild. Yeah. How many people do you have? Like how many therapists are on your team now? Because in 2019, when we had talked, you were just starting to onboard a couple of people.
I think, yeah, when we talked to you, I think we had
onboarding too.
Yeah, we had one, and we were waiting for another to pass
Yeah.
the exam, is what it was. Now we have 5.
Okay, 1, 2, 3,
5.
4, 5.
5 full time.
5. That's
Well,
amazing.
if you include Anna, 6 full time.
Yeah.
That when you think about that, that is amazing. So many people have been talking about, like, very afraid of not being able to practice because of technology and how that's going to impact them. Yet you're thriving, you're growing in spite of all the changes. That's incredible.
We've done hundreds of telehealth sessions, and we're probably verging over 1,000 at this point.
Yes, like just jumping into it. And I think, a big part of it was us, kind of acknowledging our fears and going for it anyway. And also having an amazing team who did the same.
Yeah.
And, things are scary right now on daily, and new fears are still popping up every day. And it's one thing for me to control what I do and my life and how I proceed, and and Chris as my husband and partner, and how we decide to proceed and live our life. But to see other people doing the same, like, it doesn't, oh gosh, I don't even know how to describe how that makes me feel, and how, like, I guess hopeful and proud for our field of music therapy, for our business, for our team, but honestly, for humanity, like, just seeing that in other people,
We've got a very good team.
Gosh.
I can't say enough about our team. I often say, we're not the House of Music Therapy, they are.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's
They
wonderful.
really embody the culture. Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it's really exciting too. Just having lived in this area for so long, and like there really wasn't any visible, creative arts therapies out there, and, to see you come and create this and, grow and be so accepted by the community is awesome. I love it. So.
Oh, I'm glad. And gosh, to be accepted by the community.
I'm so grateful.
I am too, coming from outsiders, and
Yeah.
we know that there are a lot of outsiders who come around here. I mean,
It's Florida.
It's Florida, so, and to truly be accepted by the full-time community who lives here year round, who was born here, or maybe who, migrated here from a different region to build their home here and create their family here, and to be accepted by that community in particular has been the most heartwarming and just best welcome I could imagine.
Just very grateful. We're just very grateful to have come to a community like this.
Yeah. Well, I imagine the community is equally as grateful that you did decide to come here, because I'm sure there were people that were like, finally, we can access this type of service that we've been looking for and hasn't been available to us. So in that way, that's awesome.
Absolutely. And telehealth is allowing us to touch even more people,
Yes.
I mean, we're seeing kids right now that are in areas that are, way out in the country,
Right.
kids that would never, I don't know, perhaps drive an hour to see a doctor.
Right.
I don't know. They're way out there,
Are you talking about like in Hendry County?
I was still figuring out Florida, right? But
so further north of us.
Basically, what I did. Here's what I did.
And
I reached out to Medicaid, and I told them, hey, look, send us the leads for, send us the folks that are out in the rural areas that haven't been picked up by other therapists yet. So we ended up getting all the kids that were, out of geographic range of every other music therapist. We've scooped those up. So all the kids that would never have received therapy, we're able to treat them now.
That's so cool. That is
Yeah.
really great. And all you did was reach out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You reached out to them. They didn't reach out to you. I think that's an incredible tip for people that are really, considering going out on their own and thinking about, well, how am I going to get clients? Who's going to work with me? But reaching out to the, funding sources that are available and positioning yourself well and, saying like, here's how we can meet this need, which is an obvious pain point, because I'm sure those families complain to them, like, nobody is available to help me.
Right.
Yeah. So that's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's kind of been, I think, a dream of ours, and kind of a goal that we've always wanted to reach was, on a more personal level, was to reach out to those communities, those more rural areas and communities that just don't have much access or easy access. And so, yeah, I'm just so glad that Chris has the knowledge to kind of help us get started and set up to do this, and that our therapist ran with it.
I just toss it up, I just toss the ideas up and they run with them.
That's great. It sounds like it's working really well and you're growing, which is super exciting, considering, a lot of people are, closing their doors. And
Yes.
so
Yes.
Absolutely.
Great. So when you guys decided, I know it's a kind of pivot to a different part of the conversation, but I want to take us back to the green screen for a minute, just to kind of help other people understand what that is, how would they go about setting that up for themselves? What were the technical considerations that you had to make in order to implement it? Maybe let's just start with like what it is for some people that might not know what it is. I mean, I think mostly everybody would, but you never know.
So here's how I often explain. Here's how I explain green screen to my mother. It's like the weatherman, whenever the meteorologist is on. And
that's perfect.
That's exact same technology, same thing.
Yep.
Exact same thing. Obviously on a smaller scale, right? A lot of the green screen, funny enough, a lot of the green screen technology I learned from gaming. And being involved in streaming and streaming gaming and stuff like that. It's very commonly used in that space.
Okay.
And so I more or less learned about it through YouTube videos. In the industry, it's called chroma key. And if you just Google or look up chroma key on YouTube, you'll find a ton of links about it. But the big thing, and then you can look on Amazon and buy a green sheet. For a while there, we were using a green poster.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah, it's use green because there's a couple of different ones. There's green and then there's blues and whatnot, but the greens tend to work best in lower light for what we're doing. We do have studio lights. We have a couple of studio lights in here, and our lighting looks pretty good, but you can still see
incredible.
You still see some things, like you'll see like around our faces, you'll see like a little green creeping through or something like that. So it's not like broadcast quality. But, for a client though, it's great. It's so versatile. We can do so much with it.
Yeah. So you just buy the sheet on Amazon and kind of hang it up like a curtain in your space, basically.
The particular software that we're using is OBS.
Okay.
And that's, I think, that's a good place to get started. It's free software. It's open source. So you don't have to pay for it or anything like that.
Everybody loves free.
Yeah. So, but now the catch of being open source is a little buggy. There's a little bug here and there, right? And sometimes you have to do things 2 or 3 times to make it work.
I will say, like, as someone who, like, I never, ever heard of this, and I probably wouldn't understand how to set it up unless I had somebody to help me navigate my way through it. Now that it's kind of set up and I'm playing with it a little bit more, I can understand it now, but it's definitely not like terribly user-friendly to just jump into something like this. I feel pretty tech savvy using it. I will say.
I had a photography background also, and that, I think that definitely helped in, picking out equipment, lights, and things like that, and figuring out how to make it all come together. I wish there was there's not like a box you can buy that will give you all of this. It's kind of a piece at a time and figuring out how to make everything work together. But big key pieces of it are knowing that you can buy green screens on Amazon, and then the OBS software. Once you have those two elements, you can really look on YouTube and kind of put the pieces together. But we sometimes we forget what we know.
Absolutely.
And so there's probably something slipping through the cracks here for me. I've been a professional photographer for 10 years. So, you forget things right over time. And then you just start doing them. It becomes like muscle memory.
That's true.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
But it has been really fun to learn and to kind of play with. It kind of reminds me of when I was little and trying to understand, computers for the first time, and just looking at a bunch of black and green symbols on a screen.
I'm right now I'm training all of our other therapists, to deploy green screen, and some of them are.
Oh, cool.
But it's been very cool, going through the training with them and teaching them, and then seeing all the crazy stuff they do with it,
Oh gosh, yes.
They do some very interesting things. But that's what I mean, I don't know. We were talking about this the other day, this notion of sort of bringing two very different skill sets together. I often find in the entrepreneurial world, that's where the most success comes from. When you take two totally different things and bring them together, I don't know.
Yeah.
Things happen when you do that.
Right. I think it has to do with, there is always that saying, I know a little bit about everything. There's a weird cliche. I forget it. Something master of none.
Yeah. Jack of all trades, master of none.
Yes, that one. But there's something about having that little bit of knowledge that builds your ability to understand that you're capable of learning what you need to know to kind of bridge the gap and create something new that hasn't been done before. And of course, that is really exciting. And I think that's really what helps businesses stand out and keep moving forward, is that ability to say, okay, here's a problem. How are we going to solve it? How are we going to keep moving forward given X, Y, and Z? What's the knowledge that I have? What's the knowledge that I don't have? Where can I find that? You guys sought out a professional to come in and give you some training to help support this switch, right? But that comes from having that knowledge base in a lot of different areas, not getting stuck in on one thing.
I think that's true, and I think that, you're describing obstacles and running into barriers, so to speak. And I think that's most people, they find a problem, start thinking about developing a business, and well, this problem would come up and I don't know how to solve it, or something to that effect. But that's the thing. If there weren't problems like that, everyone would be doing it. It wouldn't be a business opportunity if those problems didn't exist. So it's a matter of, figuring creative ways to overcome those obstacles. That's all business. That's all entrepreneurship is. Being creative, finding creative ways to solve problems.
Creativity is inherent in the process, for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So when you've been doing the green screen with your kids on the other end, what are they using in their environment? Do they have instruments at home? Are they playing along with you? What are they doing?
So here's the really fun part that we figured out. So at first we had this grand idea of passing out instrument, a little
a kit.
A kit to everybody. And I still think it's quite appropriate, and I love that idea. because, you know, kids love instruments and they should feel instruments and play instruments and move their bodies and with instruments. And some of our, most of our kids do have a couple of things that maybe me or some of my other music therapists kind of left behind for them, especially some specialty instruments. But maybe a lot of our clients that maybe started with us on telehealth,
Sure.
which we have a ton who started on telehealth, that were assessed through telehealth and started on telehealth, which is really neat.
Yeah,
many of them. So what we started doing is, you know, obviously we do still keep in mind if we need to order a specialized instrument for them, but we really started kind of refocusing the idea of always having to have instruments with us and what music therapy will or can look like. And typically a music therapist carries around their guitar, and you've probably seen me with my big rolling bag and all, you know, here comes the music therapist, oh, that's her. So we've kind of started thinking, okay, well, for safety reasons right now would not be a good time to come into contact with other people, and just, you know, with all the safety considerations, what else can we do? So I think just naturally we started using household items as different manipulative. Yeah, and it's become like just a hysterical game. Like, we do a lot of scavenger hunt type things. We do a lot of things to include our client's environment into their therapy process. And we realized that this is a big deal, that they're learning through their own environment, not something that we're providing them that we have to take away at the end of our session and they don't have when we're not there. But we're learning, we're helping them grow through things that they already have, that they're already exposed to, and also teaching them how to use what's around them and their own resources to their advantage, and not maybe just using a spatula as a spatula, but maybe a spatula as a drumstick.
Yeah.
You know, so I think, you know, it kind of taking that perspective, we've made some really, really amazing music together with our household items. And I think even Jimmy Fallon and his crew did a funny like music video, you know, like he does the little jam session, and they were all using household items. I mean, that's almost to the T what it kind of looks like in our session. We have our spoons, our spatulas, our, you know, canisters, our I think at one point there was a squash in one of our music therapy sessions. I don't know, it worked out. Food, apparently fruit makes sound, you know, and also, you know, a big part of music is the sound that music makes is not the only part of music, but the silence between the sounds is also a very essential part. So the sound or lack of sound in things are both equally important. Sound is not the only thing that needs to be made on their end. Sometimes it's moving to our musical cue. It looks like so many different things and never the same, which is something that all art and creative therapy have in common.
It's what makes it really exciting.
Yes.
Not boring.
Anna's humble. She acts like, you know, she stumbled upon this finding instruments in the home. She planned it out a whole day, and I remember when she finished the session, she came skipping out of her studio, super excited because she figured out this awesome thing that she could expand on, you know.
That's great. I think there are a few things for me that come to mind, but one is like tapping into the child's like natural curiosities about their environment and like really maximizing that. They're already very curious about the environment. That's what gets them into trouble sometimes. So, but now this is like, okay, we're going to use that, but we're going to reinforce it in a positive way. And then, so they're exploring their environment. They're also learning their own like creative problem solving skills. So you're teaching that problem solving skill. And then something that you said really stuck out to me was, we're not bringing the instruments and then taking them with us when we leave. In this case, we're teaching them how to create their own music and make their own instruments so that they have access to that. If they need to bang something out because they're having a really rough day, they can do that in a socially appropriate way. And, maybe they have like a designated pot or something that they can do that and not get in trouble versus banging on the wall or, some other maladaptive behavior that you may be working on trying to extinguish with them. So it seems like it really hits a lot of really, great objectives in helping them.
Oh my gosh, yes. And that was kind of eye-opening to me when we started doing that. And I started realizing, the limitations that I was putting on my clients and on their potential when I was doing in-person therapy. And I mean, and I felt bad, actually. I could see the unfairness there. And here's this person coming in, bringing all of these amazing and beautiful things and allowing me to touch it and play with it, but it's not theirs. I can't leave it there. And I would love to leave, instruments there and buy them all of the instruments in the world, and everybody has access to these instruments, but I can't do that.
Oh no. Yeah. I feel the same way with art materials.
Yes.
Right. They like come in and they use like something that I have, like maybe like really nice markers or something, not the Crayola markers, like really nice high quality markers or like high quality paint or something. And they're like, oh, where did you get this? Oh, I want these. Can I take these and bring them back next time?
Oh God. Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. I know, my heart every time. Can you leave this here for me? Can I play with this? Oh, I mean, how do I say no? That costs $300. I can't leave that here with you. And I know it's really beautiful and in the moment because they get something in the moment. But I mean, it also really, really hurts that I know many of our clients that we serve will possibly, for the foreseeable future, this is not a possibility for them because they're just struggling to make sure that they can feed their entire family. And that really has opened my eyes like to this, and so it's kind of fueled that kind of my thought and our therapist, our efforts to really help them be creative in their own environment and use what they have to help themselves grow. We can guide them, and that's what we are. We guide them and guide their families, and which has also been another very different thing, and
certainly
part of therapy. And while family therapy and family practice is not something new at all whatsoever, but it wasn't how we were structuring our therapy, and that wasn't the modality that we were using. And we're noticing that we have become much more family-centered through telehealth and through this process. And
that's so interesting, but it makes sense, like, because in a certain way, like when you come into the home, the parent could be like, okay, well, you've got them for the next 45 minutes or whatever, and they can go take care of something over here that perhaps, they hadn't had the attention to be able to, right? But
And
now
I liked being able to do that for them. I felt good. I'm like, yes, I got this. You go take a nap if you need to. Go make those phone calls that you haven't been able to make. Yeah. So.
But for a lot of the kids, they need the support of the parent to get the technology working. And I mean, yes, they are a little more savvy than we are in a certain way, but they still need some support. So I could see how, you know, the families are a little bit more involved in what you're doing too.
Yeah.
I noticed that I've had to like let the parent know, like, it's okay that they left me in the other room. They just went to go get an item and come back. They're not abandoning the
Exactly.
session.
Yes, it's okay. It's okay. And also that, you know, and even in our in-home, in-person therapy, using their entire space was something that I always would talk to our families about. Like, you know, we are in-home in their environment. So I really need, you know, at least majority free range so we can be sure to work on their skills appropriately. And so we still have to keep those things in mind, that I do not in any way expect them to sit in front of a camera for an entire session.
No.
And
It's
that,
too hard.
exactly. It's hard for us to sit session after session in front of a camera. I have to get up and move around and dance around. So I know the kids have to as well.
I wonder that, you know, it often I've heard therapists say that they, you know, it's more tiring to do telehealth than it is to do in person. But I wonder if it's more tiring for the client.
Yeah. And
Yeah, that's a really great question, Chris.
it is. It is.
I think I definitely have seen with the littler ones, you know, their attention span to engage is significantly less than in an in-person appointment, where, you know, kids who would want to stay until the last minute, they would be like counting the time until the last minute. Like, no, we still have 2 more minutes. That's not time to go yet. They're like, can we be done? Can we be done?
Yep.
And that probably speaking to that, like it is a lot harder.
It is. And I think a big part of that is, well, it's different on our bodies. It's different on our eyes. It's different on our ears. And that's actually something that Mark Bowden did bring up in the conversation that we had with him. And, you know, sessions are gonna look, feel, sound different. And so we have to be mindful of that. And for those kids who, especially those people who have sensory processing needs, they're going to process this information so much more different than we can understand right now. So I think it's really important to identify how they're reacting and change the way that we're delivering our services for them to meet their needs. So it might mean breaking up into 2 half-hour sessions throughout the week or the day or whatever we need to do in order to give them their time that they deserve and that they need.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, that's a really great point, is that it doesn't have to be you know, consecutive. It could be broken up into 2 different appointments.
Right. And I will say it's allowed us to get really creative and being able to, I guess, travel with our clients. Some new, gosh, our therapists are amazing. So we had a really great conversation during our meeting this week with our therapist, and one of our therapists brought up, you know, their experience with therapy in the car on the go.
Oh,
so
yeah.
unexpectedly, yeah,
Totally.
unexpectedly, they're in the car, and she said, all right, well, let's see what happens. And that was just kind of an amazing experience, an incredibly successful session that they had in the car. And she said, I mean, that was some of the best engagement that they had in one of their music therapy sessions. And it was, you know, the family had to travel. I think it was a really important, they had to be somewhere, and it was very far away, but they also did not want to miss their session. And it was just incredible that telehealth could provide this for them.
That is really cool.
Yeah, that was, and come to find out, this has happened to a number of our therapists.
Yeah, I thought it was a unique thing, and I said it in the session, and they're like, oh yeah, I did that
Oh
too.
yeah, we've done it in the car.
Yeah, we've all done this in the car, yeah.
And it worked out really well. And I mean, it's just incredible because you can go about your day-to-day life and you can do what you need to do and also still receive the therapy that you need to receive. And you know, you don't have to what's the word I'm looking for? You don't have to miss one. You don't have to sacrifice, you know, something. You can do more things. You can do more things, you know.
Yeah.
Shameless plug here, but the therapist wrote a great narrative on it on our website.
Okay.
Yeah, on our blog, we just published it.
All right, I will look for that. What's the title of it? And I'll link it in the show notes too.
Oh gosh, I'll have to probably send it to you. I can't remember exactly what the title is. Something like Music Therapy on the Go or something to that effect. I'll send it over to you.
All right, great. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I think it's crazy how it has shifted, and people are seeing the ability to do things in a different way. And for kids that normally when they're in the car, that they're already probably tuned into a screen, like so many kids will have like the iPad or, you know, the screen on the seat in
the
front
back of the seat. Yeah,
you know, like they're already like naturally kind of doing that anyway, that I'd imagine you might get better attention there than you would if they were at home and there was other things going on at home. So
they're sort of strapped in.
Yeah, they're a little strapped in too.
Yeah, they can't run away at that point. So
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also I think kind of natural, like being in the car and kind of being snug and you know, your seatbelt. Sure. I mean, I don't know what to, but every time I get in the car, I get really sleepy, especially on longer drives. So yeah,
soothing.
It's very soothing. So just kind of all around, it's just nice.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, and we have been on for close to an hour, and I am sure that it's Friday afternoon, and I am sure that you all have lots of stuff that you want to wrap up before heading into the weekend. Is there anything that you believe would be of value for listeners to hear from you about kind of implementing a more creative approach to doing telehealth that would benefit their practices?
For me, I would say, you know, we are using green screen, but I think of all of our therapists, I think I'm the only one who's using a large green screen here. So all of our other therapists are pretty much going without a green screen or using a poster size green screen. So green screen is not something that has to be there in order for telehealth and great telehealth to work, you know, well. They're also doing some amazing things without green screen. You're still able to manipulate your environment. You're still able to screen share, you know. There's still so many things you can do without the green screen. So I don't want anybody to be discouraged if they just green screen is maybe overwhelming for them, or they just can't get it all together first. That's not, there's so many other things to do other than green screen. And as a matter of fact, I think something even Mark Bowden said is, he encourages, sharing the environment with each other. So, you know, I know all of my, clients are always curious what I have going on here in my environment. So I'd be sure to share with them, oh, look what I have over here. Maybe I'll turn my camera. I've shown most of them the green screen. I'll turn off my green screen camera and just say, look, it's just a big green sheet behind me. That's all it is. And they get a kick out of that too. So, showing them our setup, our clinical setup, that would be equivalent to like a facility space, obviously not your personal information would be appropriate, but sharing your space with them is can go so far. So
yeah, cool.
The other thing I'll point out is on our website, we're working on kind of an outreach initiative around Telehealth. Yeah, where we're producing a lot of content that's meant to kind of walk the line between, whenever I say walk the line, I mean the audience, to be consumed by both music therapists and caregivers.
Okay.
Right, focusing specifically on telehealth.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I will definitely make sure that the link, I know we said we'll do that for the blog that your therapist wrote, but we'll make sure that, that information's in the show notes, and when we push it and share it out, that's great. I think a lot of people, even though we've been doing it a couple of months, people are still, struggling with doing the work via technology. And I don't think it's going anywhere, as you pointed out. And so, if we let go and stop resisting and see how we can use it as another instrument, and what are the potential opportunities that it can hold, I think we can do some really cool work with it, as you guys are doing, which is exciting. And I'm in like a number of different therapy groups on Facebook, and there was I'm pretty sure it was in one of the play therapy groups that I was on, and somebody early on made a comment, and I am not going to quote exactly because I don't really recall, but I remember the meaning about it, which was they were saying, if Mr. Rogers could connect meaningfully through the screen and make so many positive relationships with kids over the years, and really be an instrument of help to them, we can do this too. And I think, that's what this conversation made me think of, is like how you're doing that through all of the ways you're interacting through the screen. So thank you so much for being willing to come on and share about what you've been doing. It's so cool.
Thank you for having us.
of course, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for asking us to come back and
always
speak.
enjoy it. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So
Thank you so much.
seriously, thank you so much. This was awesome. You guys are really doing such cool stuff, and just so excited to like hear about it. I know you had like sent me an email, and I was like, yes, I want to do that. And then I saw your social media post, and I was like, I haven't heard back. I'm gonna out again.
Exactly. Yeah.
But a number of years ago, I was at a conference. This was probably 10 years ago, and there was an art therapist, and I can't remember his name right now, but it was in New York, and he was actually doing green screen work with his clients. So he was making like videos with the clients, like the client would design their own narrative, and then he was using the green screen, and like it was really short. They were shorts, and then like editing them in his iPad, which I imagine was probably brutal at the time, just thinking about technology from that point. But it was a really cool, like it was an all day thing. And I was like, gosh, this is amazing. Like what you can do with it. So many, capabilities, but I was obviously never able to like integrate that into my work. I'm like, that's just so much like skill level. I don't know how I could do that. But now talking to you guys, I'm thinking about it from a totally different perspective, and like how to use it with clients, even if we came back, they came in for in-person, but using the technology in person too, to do stuff with it.
Oh gosh. Yeah, I could totally see that. There's so much creativity involved, and
we're scratching the surface.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
like
we know we're scratching the surface.
Yes, and that's the thing. We definitely know this is just the very tiny tip of what the possibilities, are.
We haven't even talked about digital instruments yet. I mean,
I know, that's true.
Yeah. You had mentioned it briefly, but yeah, that is so true. So many people make so much music just with the computer alone.
Yep.
And you can do it together through,
very cool.
We have a therapist who's doing that, right?
We have one in particular who is one therapist in particular who is probably more familiar with digital instruments than the rest of us. So she's using a lot of digital instruments, and that's really cool. Really cool. She kind of is stays really, really up to date with like the different applications that are out there, the different free virtual instruments that she can just quickly, send a link to her clients and they can open it up and use them, and it's pretty incredible.
That is really cool. Very, very cool. I had an art therapy intern this past year, and she had it's like a virtual reality device, and
cool.
it was really cool. Like you put it on, and then you had these controllers, and so you go in, and then you could create like this 3-dimensional world, in like art world. And so she was like looking at it as like helping people to create their safe space, but it's like a 3-dimensional model of the safe space, but you are in it, versus where we can create a creative safe space on paper, but you're not in there the way you are. It was like that totally opened my eyes too on how the technology can be used in therapeutic ways too, that we don't have to be so scared of it.
It's so true. And I will say that does kind of remind me, using my green screen here, a lot of times with my clients, I get their input and we pick out a screen together to use for different reasons, for whatever we want to do. So where do we want to go today? What do you feel like looking at today? And I get some really great suggestions, and I'll share my screen. We'll go to Google Images together, and they'll pick out their screen that they want to look at. It's just really fun.
Super cool.
Yeah.
Really
but
cool.
I will also say that kind of going back to your VR virtual reality set, I'm pretty sure Chris has maybe that exact same setup you're talking about. He's also a VR buff.
I love VR. I've been deep into VR for many years.
Oh my gosh, that was honestly, that was my first experience with it since I was a kid in the middle of the mall, back when Max Headroom was on TV.
It's amazing. It's unbelievable.
Oh my gosh, it blew my mind. I was like, I don't want to leave here. It was so fun.
The new thing that just came out is finger recognition. So you don't actually hold a controller. There's a virtual piano you can play.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
That is cool.
it's like finger paint with, in the air, you know.
Wow, can you imagine using like painting with a paintbrush or something like?
Yeah, it sees your
Wow,
fingers
like,
and it identifies your hands and how they move and whatnot. So there's
That is
a
really
huge
cool.
opportunity in VR for therapy as well, but it's a
Oh, yeah.
little bit outside of my technical range at the moment.
yeah.
Yeah, me too. I think wait and see what happens, but I'm definitely open to integrating more of those kinds of things into the work that I do.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
It's
Awesome.
amazing stuff. Yeah, the future
Oh my
is
gosh.
amazing for that for that technology.
I think so.
Absolutely. Mhm.
well, I really appreciate you guys making the time so much.
Sure.
Wonderful.
That's awesome. Yeah, thank you for having us. We enjoyed it so much.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Creative Psychotherapist. If you like what you heard, please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. For show notes, downloads, and additional resources, head over to the website at www.creativeclinicianscorner.com.